So here we go. I believe we are live. We'll find out here in a minute once the people tell us. But hello, everybody. Welcome to Bourbon of the Week. It is a random Tuesday night live stream with Phil. I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you can recognize him without his better half there, Julie, standing right next to him, but we do have Phil here from the Bourbon Van. Phil, welcome. How are you doing
Thank
tonight?
you. I'm excited to be here, man. It's gonna be a lot of fun drinking single malt whiskeys, hanging out on a live stream on a Tuesday night. I
Not
don't, I
much
don't
better
usually
than
do much
that.
on Tuesday. I watch hockey and I fall asleep. That's it. So this is all new to me.
I'm usually the same way. I'm usually the same way. So you mentioned it. We're drinking American single malts tonight. This will be my maybe second experience with an actual American single malt. Well, second, third, and fourth. We're going to be going through three of these tonight. And if you don't know, basically what happened is my New Year's resolution was to drink more types of whiskey outside of the normal bourbon and rye world. So sticking with that, Phil was generous enough to send me a couple of samples here, three of which we'll be drinking tonight. Three more we will be drinking Thursday night on his channel. So make sure you go and if you're not already subscribed to Phil, and Julie at the Bourbon Van, make sure you do that so you can check us out on Thursday night. But again, we're just hanging out, we're talking, and we were talking a little bit before this about, what really is a single malt and all the details to what goes into those factors and how there's kind of rules, but there's kind of not rules. So if anybody has any real information about American single malts, we would love to know more about them ourselves. So other than that, we're going to pour some stuff up here. Phil, if you want to tell the people what we're drinking first, I know you have the bottles there, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I got to get something poured here. I haven't even started tonight. I'm starting with you.
Starting with
Um,
me.
yeah. So I got a screw top to start us off tonight, but don't let that scare you, Annie. I got to pick out a glass here. If you hear a lot of noise in the background, the cat just woke up and she's going crazy. So
Time to eat. We have
yeah,
Sugar
he's old
Kitty
this
and the
time.
cat. We are, in fact, live. That's good. Make sure everybody can hear us. Hello from Texas. Texas will be interesting because I believe the Balcones is Texas, is it not?
We do have a Texas one in here. Matter of
Uh,
fact, we've got three different states in this, and none of them are Kentucky. So this should be a lot of fun.
Gotta love
Um,
that.
you got the Westland to start.
Got the Westland poured. Yes.
All
I'll
right.
finish up
You're
mine. I'll
gonna love
start it
the
with
the
a.
look of this bottle.
Oh, yeah?
First off, this is our lowest proof tonight, and this is going to be a 92 proofer. But this is their special edition bottle from year one of supporting the Kraken hockey team. There, um, that's Westland and the search for the Seattle Kraken. It is their standard American single malt whiskey. I just love that it had that hockey design because I know you're a hockey guy, sports guy. You got your birds in it this weekend.
Oh, big game this weekend. Big game.
I know you're ready.
The Flyers, not so much though. The Flyers it's a rough year for the Flyers. I actually when they dropped the Kraken, I was very skeptical. I didn't love the name at first, but then they put out those uniforms and I liked those a lot. Those uniforms are
Love it.
nice.
Yeah. I've sort of adopted the Kraken because I was a Blackhawks fan for many years, and they didn't look so good out of the gate, but they're looking pretty good this year. We'll take it.
Yeah. Dan E in the
So
chat from coast to coast live. Cheers, everybody. Cheers, Dan. Leslie, yes, it is. Everything sounds good. I like to hear that. Troy and Lisa in the chat. What's going on, Troy? Welcome, welcome.
so one of the first things that you're going to notice, I'm splashing already. See, I haven't even taken a sip yet. Just
Gotta
thought
get a
maybe
first
even
sip.
start things off here. So yeah, the first thing you'll notice is that it's just a totally different profile. We're talking malted barley, or with American single malts is a single malt. So we're not getting any corn influence on this particular bottle or anything like that. It's just that barley. And then one of the things that I really like to do is drink like a malty dark beer with my American single malts. I think it brings out a lot of flavor, but I try to avoid drinking a lot of bourbon or rye. Um, I don't taste them in succession with single malts unless I really want to get like the difference between a couple of things. Because single malts, what's interesting is the terroir. They're all so different. This Westland actually comes from Seattle, which is bonkers to think about, like a whiskey made right in Washington State. But they've been around for a while. They're doing some really cool things. Matter of fact, I have a bottle on its way here from Ghostfish Brewing, which is across the street from them in Seattle, where Westland gave them a barrel to age their anniversary beer in, which was a millet wine. And now that they've aged that millet wine, bottled it, they're sending that barrel back to Westland so that they can finish one of the Westland whiskeys in a beer barrel. So nice little symbiotic relationship they've got going on over there. Oh, I lost your audio, Chris.
Am I back?
There you
Sometimes
go.
this thing like there we go. Okay, but the flavor you were talking about the nose on it, or just like the flavor profile in general, and it's the second I smelled it, I had to sip it just because I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Completely different for the first time experiencing it, and it's not a bad different. I think I do have to. I think it's definitely something I'm gonna have to get used to a little bit,
Hmm.
but I can definitely see myself liking this in the long run.
So you've been your channel is what, 2 years you've been doing this,
2 years, yep.
and you're mostly bourbon, rye, that sort of thing up until now, right?
I've had a Canadian whiskey or two, but yeah, 99% has been bourbon and rye.
About 2 years into like my sort of whiskey journey I'm currently on, um, is when I started craving different flavors, and whether that was Scotch, single malts, um, finished stuff, just anything that was unusual. Because at some point you get a little palate fatigue,
I got bored.
and so that's why even though the first couple times that I tried some various things, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. Then flavors start to open up once you realize what you're looking for.
And I think it was the same
Um,
way even with bourbon, where, the first time I tried whiskey was to kind of impress my father-in-law, and I went, "Oh yeah, this is delicious, right?" And he had a whole table full of it, and you go over and you try one and you try another, and you're like, "Wait, this one actually, I do actually like this one. I don't have to lie about it anymore." And
yeah.
you get into it a little bit more.
So this one very earthy. You don't get the vanilla from the barrel or dark brown sugar. This is really somewhat Scotch-like. There is a peated presence here. It is gentle smoke that was very low on that scale. So it's one of those more easy drinkers. And at 92 proof, I think it's a nice entry point. There are people who absolutely adore Westland as a distillery, and there's people that absolutely hate it. It's not for everybody.
Right.
But at that proof point, and with just a little bit of peat, no smoke or anything on it, but a ton of fruit is what I get on this. It's like a fruit cocktail in a glass.
Gotcha. David's asking, has anybody tried Belford bourbon? I haven't personally. The only thing I've had out of Texas, Dave, has been Balcones, which we're about to try tonight for one of our samples here. Sugar Kitty saying, unfortunate Flyers fan here, looking more and more like the early Brindamore days, and got to agree, it's tough out there. And you would think they would finally just go out and tank. This guy that's this number one pick overall for next year is supposed to be generational talent, but here we are, typical winning 6-5 games for no reason. Jake, what's going on? Cheers. Rebel, cheers. Jason W. Now there's probably going to be a lot of names in this chat that you recognize more than I do, Phil. So feel free
Yeah,
to say hi to your people. Canadian Chris, did somebody say Canadian? Hello. Yes.
Canadian
Welcome.
Chris, big winner on our stream last Thursday.
Okay.
Um, Eric Gunderson's in the house. Fantastic. Welcome to Leslie Lockett, of course. Troy and Lisa Toole. Yeah, Dave Vogelzang. Know a lot of these names. Great to see
Uh,
everybody in here. This is fun. And by the way, there are a couple of people in here that know a lot more about American single malts than I do. Eric Gunderson, for instance, he's a wealth of knowledge. He has sent us whiskeys that have opened up our minds to these flavor profiles. So
And this
uh,
is the great way to do it as well. When people who do know or have more than you, rather, because when I first started with bourbon, it was you'd go out and you'd try it and you'd buy a $50 bottle and be like, I don't really like this that much, and then you'd have to go back buy a $40, and then it's this is a nice way, get a couple of samples, figure out what you like, and then go from there.
yeah, absolutely. So the Westland profile, I think what makes it super interesting is the fact that they're one of those like super eco-conscious distilleries. They actually just won Eco Distillery of the Year. I'm not sure who gave it to them, but I just saw that award come through about a month ago. Um, and being in Seattle and using all Washington ingredients I think there's only a couple of things that may come from elsewhere, but non-chill filtered, no coloring added, aged a minimum of 3 years. So that's the other thing. It doesn't have to be in the barrel to get a ton of flavor. And yeah, just not traditional bourbon or rye or anything like that. It's just unusual and a nice entry point to the style.
I get a little bit almost like a coffee and a chocolate note on this, is the two things that I thought about when I first had it. I don't know if that's the peatiness or something like that, but when I drank it,
Mhm.
I almost thought of the smell, the aroma almost gave me like a coffee note to this.
Well, yeah, for sure. Coffee is something you'll find on a lot of them. And I think chocolate as well. Malted barley imparts that. I feel like even in high malt bourbons, I tend to get a lot of chocolate.
Yep.
So what I like about this too is sometimes you get like a cheaper chocolate. It's almost like I don't know. Sometimes I get like a Kit Kat chocolate flavor on certain bourbons that are high malt. But on American single malt, for some reason, I don't know if there's any scientific, any science behind this or not, but it tends to be more of a higher end chocolate, like a little, maybe it's not quite as sweet or something. I don't know why I associate it that way. I
It's
got
a
weird
it's a
taste.
better chocolate. There, it's a better
Yeah,
chocolate, and I'm sure it all, like you said, it's that maltiness that does that. So if they're sourcing better malt, for the bourbons when there's only 3% malt in there, I'm sure they're not worried about the quality of the malt as much as they are in something that is quite a single malt. So it's very
certainly.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and this, like I mentioned before, terroir for American single malt is a huge deal. All the whiskeys that we're going to drink tonight, Washington State, Colorado, and Texas, um, totally different flavor profiles because of where the malt is grown or the barley is grown, because of where it's aged and how it's aged. So all of these very unique in their own right. Um, yeah, the Westland. Actually, I just gotta share. I was going to look that up real quick because I want to share the numbers on these for prices and stuff
Go
for you
ahead.
as well. Uh,
Dave's over here talking Belfour was a goalie. I didn't make the connection until you said trying the Belfour bourbon there, Dave. Belfour, one of the first games I ever went to, the Flyers fans back in the day used to chant that goalie's name. They would go, Belfour, every time he gave a goal. We must have scored on him 6, 7 times that night. And the fans had him rattled. And the second you said Belfour was a goalie, I was like, my grandmother went to that game with me. It was the only game I ever went to with my grandmother. And it was something I'll never forget. It was funny that you say that. So
I was probably throwing stuff at the TV that night.
I'm
I was
sure.
the Eagle man. He was our guy for so long.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was old when I was watching, I feel like.
Yeah. Dan E says that there's a Westland Red Hook Brewery collab at his local big box that has him curious. That's the same thing that they're doing with Ghostfish right now. Apparently, that's a series that they're doing with various distill or breweries around the country. So I think that's pretty awesome that they're doing that. I love seeing distillery and brewery collaborations.
I was gonna say, is that a new? I know that happens a lot on the brewery side of things, right? I know a lot of breweries will do stuff in bourbon aged barrels and stuff like that from the bourbon experience. Is that something that you've seen a lot on the other side of things, aging whiskey in beer and well, back and forth, I guess, is what you would have to do.
Yeah, and I've seen it kind of in strange places. Clonakilty, for instance, the Irish whiskey, they finished their whiskey in barrels from Pelican Brewing here on the coast in Oregon, which was the strangest thing, but it was Tsunami Stout. So stout with Irish whiskey, it's a nice pairing. It was an interesting bottle. And then Deschutes Brewery has been doing this for years with um, uh, Crater Lake Spirits down the road here in Bend, where their Black Butte Porter, they send it unhopped to Crater Lake Spirits, who then turns it into whiskey, who then sends those barrels back to Deschutes to put beer in it, who sends it back to Crater Lake. And the symbiosis is crazy. And now they've got tons of different variations of that whiskey, tons of different variations of the Black Butte Porter family. So fun to see and exciting that there's collaboration anywhere. And there's always collaboration in the spirits world. I feel like that's exciting to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with these barrels becoming more and more limited that we're hearing about, I wonder if that's playing a big factor in, hey, how can we use these barrels as many times as possible before we have to truly throw them away and get rid of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Clear Creek Distillery in Hood River, they talk a lot about that. Like they frequently will find new ways to use their barrels, especially like they use used bourbon barrels for apple brandy aging, which then they use for their bourbon barrels again. And then they've got a peated single malt McCarthy's that's absolutely delicious, and they're finding new ways to finish that and use those barrels for all sorts of different things. And they make a ton of fruit brandies, and all those things eventually wind up contributing to some sort of flavored finish eventually, so that their barrels last as long as possible.
That's smart way to do it. David A saying, "Is this a scheduled live?" It's a little last minute, but at the same time, I would say like 4 or 5 days now. Phil hit me up saying that the wife is out of town, so wanted a little bachelor party night. So this is his bachelor party night, drinking some American single malt live on stream with me. And like I said, on Thursday we're gonna be on his channel drinking 3 other ones, which we'll talk about later. Right now we're sipping, like you said, 92 proof Westland. I will say, if I were to, the only thing that you basically put on these is the proof, which I'm glad you did. But if I were to blind this, I don't know if I would say it was 92 proof. I don't know if, just for my first experience with an American single malt, I think it sips very easy for 92 proof.
I would agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is a touch thin. It's oily, but it doesn't like linger too long on the palate.
But also
Um,
the flavor. I mean, normally at 90 proof, especially, I'm interested. We have 112 and 132 proof, so I feel like we should move right through it on that in that way. I'd be interested to see where those flavors start to jump, because in bourbon, like an 80 proof next to 130 proof, you're getting 100% different flavor profile. Even if it's the same whiskey, you've got
yeah,
a cask strength version of the same thing. You're like, this 92 proof doesn't even compare. So I am going to save a little bit of each one just so I can start to go back through on each one. But
yeah,
for the flavor that you get on this for 92 proof, I'm very surprised. Very surprised.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's just an amazing. I just love what all of these American single malt companies are doing. All these brands are finding amazing flavors. It's one of the things that I'm most excited about hitting the road for this year with the van is finding these local distilleries. A lot of these things you don't find all across the country. What we're tasting tonight are definitely available out there, readily available across the country for the most part. But there are tiny little American single malt distilleries that you just pop into a little town and there they are, and you've never heard of them before, but they're all making cool stuff. So really hoping that we can support some of those smaller distilleries as we travel around this year, because it's amazing how many small distilleries, craft distilleries are out there right now that are coming of age, that have been aging things for several years now. And so I feel like for the last decade, we've been hearing, oh, these craft distilleries, they're making good stuff, but they're so young. Well, they're not so young anymore. And a lot
Right.
of us probably visited those distilleries back in the day and sort of wrote them off a little bit.
Yep.
Now it's time to go back and check them out again. So that's one takeaway for me, for especially from American single malt, that bracket is there's a lot of stuff that's coming of age right now that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I agree, and I feel like we're seeing that across the whole whiskey world, where there's been, the boom now started 10 years ago, and everybody saw where it was going, and it took off. And again, you said there's so many craft places out there and you can see it even in the bigger guys now are buying up the smaller guys, because one, they're running out of barrels, two, they're running out of product, three, they know these guys have the product it's a good Wilderness Trail just got bought up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Uncle Nearest is starting to put out their own whiskey now. They're not as many of these guys are sourcing anymore, because they were sourcing to get their stuff. They didn't want to put out a 6-month-old, a 1-year-old bourbon, so they were sourcing to get into that 5, 6, 7-year-old range. And it's going to be very interesting over the next couple of years to see what a lot of these smaller places can do. And with you and
Yeah.
Julie traveling all the time, I think that's one of the most interesting parts about your channel is you get to visit those places where every review, everything you're seeing is, oh, check out the Larceny A123. It's like, okay, we saw Larceny A122, we saw Larceny A121, and I love I love to find out what the next big distillery is doing, but at the same time, it's very interesting to see who's going to be the next big thing, who's going to be the up and coming. We just talked about 13th Colonies down in Georgia. Is Troy and Lisa basically introduced me to them, and now they're making people's top 10 of 2022 list, and nobody even heard of them before this. So, and they have
Yeah.
9-year-old whiskey. They're 13 years old and they have 9-year-old whiskey out. So it's just very interesting to see where these distilleries have come from and where they're going to go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love the concept of just being able to go down the street and go to an awesome distillery
Yeah.
that, just go to your neighborhood distillery, see it, check it out, go have a look, because there's a lot of really good ones out there that are worth your time. Should we move on to the next sample here?
I believe so. So this is the only one that I've truly heard of. This is the Stranahan's, I'm assuming. Is that out?
Yeah, it's Stranahan's from Colorado. This is a single barrel, a cask strength single barrel. We picked it up at a place called Cask and Cellar in, I believe, Schererville, Indiana. And so, this is distilled in the heart of Denver, they say. We've had a few of these. The best ones that I've had are the high strength ones. They have some
Okay.
finished ones out there. They have their standard, line out there and everything. But this is a bottle this is actually our third bottle of this. This one was aged for 5 years and 11 months, and it's 112.82 proof. And their bottles come with a little jigger.
Oh, you get the shot glass right there.
It's handy, not too bad.
Brent, what's going on? Sorry, I didn't see. I saw your message there for a little bit. I was just so focused on what we were talking about. Brent, what's going on? You're not late. You're right on time. Dan says the craft boom is on the horizon. If not just popping off now. I just hope distribution gets better for the little guys or better online marketplaces. That's the tough part for those smaller distilleries is definitely distribution. I know it's pretty much impossible to get into Pennsylvania without a year-long notice. So I don't know how easy it is for outsiders to get in and out of Oregon for distribution, but I can't imagine just to get away. If you're local, I guess if you're within a few states, it'd be one thing, but to get cross country would be a different thing. And then a lot of love for 13th Colonies. Jason said something. Danny, 13th Colony Do is on my unicorn list now. It's definitely their newest one, I believe, comes out in spring. Their second release, which will be interesting to see. But yeah, I think the first release is pretty much dried up.
The yeah, I don't know anything about that brand other than just like the few things I've heard online and everybody's raving about it. And I'm looking at them like, oh man, how many calls a day are they fielding right now? That's just
So it's
overwhelming their system.
gotta
But
be.
good for them.
So this is the only one that we have, I believe, at least that I've seen on my shelf. I know we have Balcones. I don't know if we have the particular one that you sent me, but
No,
Stratahan's is the only one that I believe I've seen on my shelf.
yeah, it'll be interesting to go to the Balcones because what we've got is actually a single barrel that was picked locally here. Their
Okay.
single malt, I think, is 107 or 108 proof, and that one is really accessible, approachable, very good whiskey too. This one is a monster, so we'll save that one for last. We'll get to it.
Gotcha. Well, cheers. Let's try this out.
Cheers.
Completely different than the first one.
Mhm.
Almost like is that fruit on the front? It almost tastes like very sweet, like almost a wine, maybe. I don't even know what that is on the front.
It's like it's like raspberries that don't have a ton of flavor, and then somebody muddled them with a bunch of sugar.
That's exactly what it is. It's raspberries with yeah, old raspberries that just somebody was like, throw these in something and add sugar.
Yeah. By the way, the last bottle that we tried, the Westland, was a $75 bottle. The Stranahan's here is usually priced close to that, but this was the very last bottle they had at the store, and they gave it to me for $50. So here's to non-price controlled states too, because
It's
sometimes they really turn out.
yeah, it works out. I know you have a lot of relationships where you are locally, I'm assuming, which is
Mhm.
always good to have here in Pennsylvania, and anybody can attest to this in the chat. There's no such thing as building relationships, unfortunately, at least not within the state. Jersey's not too far and you know some people, but here in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania it's literally state controlled, one state's local state liquor store, and you can make friends with the manager all you want, but they don't know what's coming unless you know somebody higher up, which has been some controversy here in Pennsylvania lately. Is
Yeah.
it's the only way you got
We
it.
we tend to, because everything is state controlled, everybody gets a little bit of something. A lot of times we'll just go to a smaller store.
Yeah,
We stop into these mom and pop shop stores or stores that are in grocery stores and things when we're on the road. It's amazing what we find out there. And actually, some of our best relationships are with people who own stores in other states. We have a great relationship with a store owner in California. We have a great relationship with a store owner in Indiana. It's not like they're holding things for us, but they when we come in, we it's just
right.
fun to talk to them. We have a nice the relationship is it's not that we get such great things, but it's like, oh, I've got this. If it's in a non-price controlled state, they will tell you like, by the way, this is my last bottle of this or whatever. And maybe it's salesmanship. I don't know. Maybe it's not a relationship at all, but
Either
pretty
way,
happy to have this one for $50. It's
yeah.
an awfully good whiskey, I think.
And like you said, it's good to talk to people. Maybe they know something about one of those bottles that come in that you would have never even had your eye on. And you walk in and they say, hey, listen, we just got this in. I've tried it. It's great. Where,
Yeah.
I walk in and I'm like, hey, you like any of this bourbon? And they're like, what do you want? Get out. You know what I mean? There's a line full of people and 20 people on the phone calling about Blanton still. So that's the way it goes here.
Yeah.
Multicasting. What's going on, Gene and Charlie? How you doing tonight?
This Yeah, this Stranahan's this is like I said, I think it's our third bottle of it now. The cask strength, it's always a cask strength single barrel is what we've gotten, and I think unreasonably good. It- for all the times that I see people chasing, you know, various things, and a lot of these American single malts are just sitting in our backyards. Stranahan's is always on the shelf by us. Maybe not a single barrel and not for this price, but it's these single malts are just sitting there being made by distilleries that have been around. I mean, McCarthy's Clear Creek Distillery, that 1983 or 1986, maybe they've been making stuff since. They're one of the oldest distilleries in America. I mean, Steve McCarthy just passed away, and he was a pioneer in the American whiskey world. It's when it was starting to come back, just that, in the 80s when it was just starting to make its comeback. And American whiskey has been around. American single malts have been around since then. And so you're getting more well-aged ones. You're getting plenty of distribution. You're getting some that it seems like this is going to sound bad. It's not meant to be that way. The old timers know something that we don't. It's most of the people that are introducing me to these flavors are people that are 20 to 25 to 30 years older than me, who this is what they've been drinking for years. And the bourbon craze has been fun for them, but they already know about this style, and they've been loving it for a decade or more.
Right.
The rest of us are catching up, and we're learning that the flavors are fantastic. They're absolutely outstanding.
And I will say, I mean, this is a very simplistic approach to what I'm about to say, but take it with a grain of salt. Off of these two, as far as like a standard bourbon lineup, I get so much variation. Now you can finish bourbons, you can do different things with bourbons. They're obviously high rye, which is going to give you more spice. There's wheated bourbons, there's stuff like that. But as far as variations between two different drinks right here, I mean, you're getting a completely different experience between these two right here. I don't know if that's standard across the board with single malts where everything could be something new, but with bourbon, it's, again, we talked about it earlier, you get bored of that A122, the Elijah Craig barrel. They're so similar every year that sure, they tend to change a little bit, and some are a little bit better than others, but these right here, you could find something you truly love and dive deep into it, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's, no, I don't want to take anything away from bourbon and rye. I love bourbon and rye. Absolutely. I know you do too.
Yes.
But you do sometimes want just different flavors. And a peated American single malt at 92 proof that drinks super easy is the perfect pairing for a cigar or a pipe on your porch. And this Stranahan's cask strength is the perfect thing to share with somebody who, maybe they don't drink a lot of whiskey, but this is a affordable, delicious whiskey. And the other thing I find about American single malts, you can put them over an ice cube. You can put any, whiskey over an ice cube, but especially this one and the next one, they have big proof, huge flavors. And over an ice cube, it just opens things up and it continues to change all the way through. You just keep getting new flavors. And a lot of people think American single malt, what's the difference between that and Scotch? Well, there's quite a huge difference, honestly, but there are a couple of American single malts that are peated, or a few, and then there's a lot of them that aren't, and that opens up a world of flavors. And again, the terroir, just like the regions in Scotland, it matters. It makes a huge impact. So here we have, Seattle aged on the coast at basically sea level, and then Stranahan's in Denver aged a mile high for 5 years, 11 months. That stuff makes huge difference, just like it does in any other kind of whiskey. But these flavors are unlike anything that we're used to in the bourbon world. At least, somewhat. There's still some correlation there, but comparatively speaking, I find if you want to get adventurous with your flavors, American single malt's the place to do it.
Yeah. So for anybody just joining us right now, we're sipping on Stranahan's Cask Strength 112.8 proof. This is a single barrel, you mentioned, this particular version that we're sipping on.
Yeah. Yeah, this one came from Schererville, Indiana, Cask and Cellar store number 3.
The first glass that we had was a Westland. That one was 92 proof. I'm saving a little bit for each one of these. Again, the Kraken label on there, which is absolutely fantastic. I do want to compare all three at the end. We still have a balcony. Now I say balconies. Do you say balcones? Do you call this balconies?
I say balcones. I don't really think about it.
Yeah, I don't either. That's what I've always called it, so that's what I've always said.
I say everything wrong though, because I read a lot, but I don't really watch a lot. So
see, I'm the opposite. I don't read at all, and I watch. So if they say it one way, that's how I say it for the rest of the time. So we have 3 samples tonight. Again, on Thursday, we will be joining Phil on his channel for a little back-to-back this week. For same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have 3 other samples that Phil sent me. I'm curious, though, for anybody in the chat right now that feels like sharing, have you guys stuck? The reason we're doing this tonight is this was my New Year's resolution to try whiskeys outside of bourbon and rye. So if anybody in the chat has a New Year's resolution, whether it's whiskey related or not, everybody does the same. I'm going to go to the gym more and I'm going to do that. I've tried that. I've failed enough at it. I feel like drinking different types of whiskey isn't as difficult to stick with.
It's very attainable. Yeah, I believe in you on that one.
I appreciate it. I know you guys are big bikers. Do you have any big biking? Did you have any big goals with biking or
we were hoping
trails
to run,
or anything?
we were hoping to do some running, some distance running this year. We just signed up for a really
Running.
ridiculous race with some friends of ours. It is a relay that goes from Roseburg, which is wine country here in Oregon, to the coast. So it's about a half marathon for each of us. Starts at 6 a.m. and then you just get to the coast as soon as you can. So
Yeah. I said biking. I had a Peloton bike over here earlier. I know big runners. You guys have the running app and everything. You can follow you on that or
yeah, we're on Strava.
yeah.
We have the Bourbon Van Run Club on Strava, and I am on Peloton too. Actually, Julie does it a lot more than I do. But yeah, we get out as much as we can, just do whatever the heck we can. But yeah, one of these days we'll get really on board with our training, and we'll go do something else again. Julie ran the Chicago Marathon. I guess that's going on 2 Octobers ago, and she was talking about maybe she wants to go and do something like that again soon. So we'll
That's
see what
not
she gets
I
into.
know I'm very proud of you too. I can't run. Just something about I know it's 95% a mental thing. It's just you got to
Yeah.
get past that mental block because your body tells you no and you just got to say yes. It's not I can't do it. My knees. That's what I tell people. It's my
You need
knees.
good podcasts. I really think that's what it is. I think that I'm so busy with everything else, with work and the channel and just life in general, that being able to say, you know what, I got this long run I got to train for. I need to go out and be on trails for 8 hours today.
Right.
Um, you kind of I feel like I need it, so that helps.
Dan said New Year's res, more crafters on my list. Whiskey Del Bach, King's Chattanooga, Catskill, French Lick, Cedar Ridge, Chemist, Ashburn Park. So many to hunt down this year. That's the hard part with the craft distilleries is there's what 50 in every state, and then whatever state you go to, you got to try another one, and you don't know what you're gonna get. You know, we talked about it earlier. You could get something great, you could find the new hidden gem, or you could get something you don't like, and normally with those craft distilleries you're spending a little bit more, but like Phil mentioned earlier, it's always nice to support the smaller guy who's trying to make it out there. So
The I heard a couple of them that I'm actually really interested in there. Del Bach is one that we desperately like. That's top priority. Like we're heading to the Southwest at some point this year, and Whiskey Del Bach is one that we are absolutely. We've been told all these that it's absolutely amazing whiskey. We have seen it around, but we want to go to the source. So
right.
we want to check them out this year, and then Spirits of French Lick is absolutely amazing. They have a 4 grain, and the fourth grain is oats, and that's an awfully
That's
good
new.
whiskey. And that the mouthfeel on that is incredible. I got a single barrel of that in Indiana, but if you're in Indiana and you're going to go to Spirits of French Lick, you should definitely keep Starlight and Old 55 on your list too. Those three they're crushers. They're all unbelievably good distilleries.
Yeah, I know Old 55 won your 2022 whiskey of the year, correct?
Yeah, that was Julie's pick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would that was added to the list the second I saw that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on it for the video when I put out my video for you guys as well, with you guys involved as well. But I definitely put that on my list the second I saw
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that Old 55. We have a cask strength version of it. That was the bottled and bond that won and finished second for me, first for her. And we have a cask strength it's just starting to open up, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It is such a good whiskey. It's just mind blowing.
Chris Beaton in the house. I know you know that name. Late to the party. Hi, Chris and Phil and all the other fine folks. What's going on, Chris?
Chris, what's up?
My New Year's resolution, Bourbon Trail. So the Bourbon Trail was something that I had on, I would say, 2 year right when COVID hit. We had me and my wife had the plan set. We were ready to go. COVID hit, everything shut down, obviously. Couldn't do it. Put it off for the year, put it off for another year. There were things starting to open up finally, and then we had my beautiful daughter Haven, so she was pregnant, so we waited. Then we have, a 2-month-old baby, so I was like, that ain't gonna happen. I'm not leaving my 2-month-old baby. So now here
No.
we are with a 16-month-old, and hopefully by the end of this year we'll be able to get down there. But it's one of those things you need 6-8 months in advance to plan, because to get some of these things on the schedule, they're out there.
When we went in October. I think it was October of 2021. Yeah, and it was we didn't really have any plans. We didn't schedule anything in advance. We just kind of
Okay.
went there. We stayed in a hotel that was nearby, and we hit the hot spots. We went to Michter's the moment we were the first ones there when they opened. We didn't get it. We didn't go on a tour or anything, but we got to
Right.
fill our own bottle because we were the first ones there.
Which is
We
what you
said,
want to do anyway.
yeah, we were like, what can we get? Because I've seen a million distillery tours, and they're
Yeah.
all fun, and there are some that are very different. Like at Four Roses, that Spanish Mission style is gorgeous. That one's worth planning. And Wild Turkey is cool, especially the new facility there. It's really gorgeous. But just going to Wild Turkey, we just walked in. They were having a glass shortage, so there wasn't anything special you could even buy. We just walked in, but there's Jimmy Russell just sitting there. Just walk
Hanging
up and
out.
say hi. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I don't need a tour. I met an icon. I met a legend. That's good enough.
that's the
Um,
tour.
yeah, that's the tour to me. Yeah, talk
Yeah.
to him for 5 seconds, and it's that's a special moment. Like it's maybe I look at it a little differently than most people because I have been fortunate enough to be to so many distillery tours and all that. But I think just those moments of being there, getting to pour your own nectar, is getting to walk into Wild Turkey and see Jimmy. But that whole strip there in downtown Louisville is like it's so extremely walkable from Justin's House of Bourbon to the Heaven Hill Experience to Peerless. It's all right there. Old Forester. You don't have to go on a tour to just walk in, try their whiskeys, say hi to the people that are working there or whatever, and it's still a great experience. So I do, it's a great thing to plan, but I think if you build it up too much, it's one of those things that can overwhelm you too because there's so many things that everybody wants to go to Buffalo Trace and Wild Turkey and Maker's Mark, which Maker's is a great facility too, easy to get into and walk around in, and they usually will get you on a tour quickly without even worrying about it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
there's plenty.
think mentioning the like I going back to the smaller distillery, I feel like that personalized approach at a smaller distillery is probably more influential in the actual experience than like you said, where these people are just kind of pushing. You're pushed through a line. Hey, here's this. Hey, here's that. It's like, I had a question. It's like, all right, we're moving on. Like you mentioned, Michter's, you want to fill your bottle. Maker's Mark, you want to dip into the red
Of
wax.
course.
There's those things that you want to do. I don't think anybody would never want to meet Jimmy Russell. So that just doing that alone is, like you said, that's the tour. Where if I were to, now that you mention it, like go on these tours, I feel like a smaller distillery, the local backyard place. I just talked about McLaughlin Distillery, which was a bottle I found. It's out in Pittsburgh area. They're just this. It's a rick house in the woods. It's moonshiners, but legally being done in the woods, and it's these people, and they've been there for years. That's the distillery you want to go see, and that you want to go tour with five
Yeah.
other people, and you get to ask anything you want or look at anything you want.
Well, the best tour that we did get we didn't take many, but the one that was the absolute best was Wilderness Trail, because their cat Cooper just wanders around with you. He's the guide, and and he takes great photos. He'll pose for you. Cooper is the best little tour guide in all of Kentucky, as far as I'm concerned.
That sounds like the way to go as well. I dropped the Jack Daniel's Special Edition Rye, Shattered
Oh
KMN.
no.
That's not a good day. You gotta just chalk that up to a loss for the day. Only distillery I did was St. Augustine Distillery in Florida. I have not heard of St. Augustine, I don't believe, unless there's something they put out that I don't know about.
St. Augustine isn't the one that makes that crazy bourbon finished bottled and bond rum, is it? No,
Uh,
no, no. That's a different one.
and now I'm
Um,
trying to think, what's the one with they have the painting on it? No, that's another one. They have an artist for the Austin, I
yeah,
think. Is that Austin? I don't know. Something like that. Team Cooper, Sugar Kitty, Team
yeah.
Cooper.
Of course, Sugar Kitty was on it. Of course.
Brent says, when are you coming back to the Pittsburgh side of the state? If I have anything to do with it, Brent, I will never be back to the Pittsburgh side of the state. I'm a Flyers fan, so I hate Pittsburgh in general, but I've been to Pittsburgh twice. I've been there for an outdoor Flyers game and to visit a friend who had family out in Pittsburgh. The first time I went to Pittsburgh, they were doing construction on one bridge, and I don't know if you know anything about Pittsburgh, but there's three bridges to get in and out of the city. So when they do construction on one bridge, you can't get out of the city because it's just the other two bridges are traffic. So, and then the other thing about Pittsburgh is it's built on a 45-degree cobblestone road. So by the time you get from the top to the bottom, it's snowing. I don't like Pittsburgh. City's trash. Love you guys for being here though. I appreciate you for that. Thanks, Brent. There's always construction in PA. That's the truth.
Oh, Still Austin is the one with the painting. That's right. We love Still
Still
Austin.
Austin. Yes, not a St. Augustine. It was something like that. There was an A in there. So back to these two. We'll get to these two. We'll pour up this third one in a minute. I will say, as of right now, this second one, the Stranahan's, is definitely better for me than the Westland 92 proof. And I think you would expect the same, correct?
I would expect you to say that, and I think I agree too. I have to be. The Westland is kind of like when I want to drink scotch. If I'm not in the mood for something peated, I'm not
And it's
probably.
not bad by any means. It's just
Yeah,
it has those notes. It has those darker notes, those coffee, those chocolate notes really come out of this one. Where
yeah,
this one is just, and I'm the same way with bourbon. I don't like the older stuff. I like the sweetness, the fruitiness, the floral notes, the brightness that you get. So this one gives me more of that, while the Westland gives me more of those dark aged chocolate type of notes.
yeah. The Westland is very earthy. Certainly, it's the walking through the forest sort of thing.
Right, absolutely.
Are we
So are you?
pouring Balcones next?
Let's do it up.
All right.
132 proof. Might as well end it with a bang here.
That's exactly what's going to happen. This is a single barrel chosen by our friends at Trailhead Liquor here in Bend, and this one is, like I said, they have a single malt that I believe is 107 or 108 proof. That I think it's a fantastic whiskey. Yeah, there's a little color there.
I was just I don't know. I was gonna say can they tell on the camera, but I'm looking here. This right here is dark.
Yeah, usually this is the one that I like to take a huge rocks glass. I get a big square ice cube, shove it in the glass. I'll put this on it, and I'll drink it for hours.
Paul says that's got to be the Balcones. That's the
Yeah.
Balcones right there. So again, the
Uh,
only Balcones I've had is just their Texas bourbon, their standard red label Texas bourbon, which I didn't love. So this one worries me a little bit.
well, I'm not a huge Balcones fan. Their single malt is the thing that sort of pulled me in.
Everybody's got
Um,
one, right?
yeah. So there's the
I
that's it.
like
It's
that.
aged for 59 months. It said minimum 59 months. Um, but yeah, the aged in a new American oak barrel for 59 months. Very specific there.
I was
Uh,
gonna say for those of us that aren't good at math, that's what, right under 5 years. 12,
4 years,
24,
11
36.
months, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years, 11 months. Okay, that's how I'm gonna introduce my
Think
daughter
so?
too. People get mad at me all the time. How old is she? See, the tough thing about having I hated being when I would be introduced to babies. They'd be like, "Oh, she's 16, 17 months." I'm like, "All right, relax." Like at one point, you got to stop the months thing. But now I have a daughter, and I'm like, "Well, she's 14 months, going on 15." But if you say a year, then they're like, "Oh, she has a lot of teeth for a year," and I'm like, "Well, actually, she's like a year and a half." So
Do you introduce
and
yourself as being like 360 months or
300.
something?
It makes
Yeah.
me feel a little bit better, right? Better than 32.
Ooh,
The nose on this is wild, first of all.
yeah. This
And
is
this is 132 proof, by the way.
yeah.
130. I don't know if we mentioned that. Again, I will say for the first two, before I even sip this, they did not sip anywhere near what I thought their proofs were going to be. I knew their
Yeah.
proofs going into it. I sipped it. I was like, okay, those are easy, very easy to sip.
I think this is going to go the other direction for you.
Do you think it's gonna be hot?
Yeah, I've always thought that it was hot, but I still love the experience.
Yeah, got a little heat to it. But also, I got to take another sip before I say what I'm thinking. I don't know. I don't know what that flavor is. It's not off-putting, which is what I was hoping. Not hoping, but what I was expecting with Balcones. It's not off-putting. It's just again, we're into a third flavor profile here on,
Totally different.
and these are all just single malts. There's nothing
These
finished.
aren't
Nothing.
no,
That's
no,
crazy
just
to me.
American single malts from various places around the country. This one lingers.
This could be dangerous though at
Oh yeah,
132 proof.
yeah. This is a take your time whiskey,
Yeah.
but this is one that is perfectly paired with like a. If you've got a pipe tobacco that's really vanilla heavy, oh man, it's beautiful. But this is I get. Well, you tell me what you think you're getting on.
I keep drinking it and I can't figure it out. There's one specific note right off the front, and I'm just trying to kind of like put my finger on it. Dan says these two are drinking motor oil right now. That's honestly what the color of this is just. I don't think I've ever seen anything colored like this whiskey wise.
Paul Johnson, he's right. Their standard single malt, absolutely fantastic. This is just
That's the one
another.
we're drinking.
No, we're drinking the single barrel version of it, but their
Oh, the
single malt
single
that's
barrel
107,
version.
108 is
Okay.
proof is very very tasty.
I can smell it and I can taste it, and I just still can't like put my finger on what it is.
The smell is crazy. The smell is almost like a I don't know, like a wild sarsaparilla, like a crazy, almost like bitter at first, but super herbal. But then the palate for me is like birthday cake frosting on like vanilla frosting on shoe leather.
It might be the leather that I'm thinking of right here.
Like I used
It's
to,
it's
the first time I tried it, I was like, oh, it tastes like a leather belt. But then the more I think about it, I'm like, no, this has been on the ground. This is,
this yeah, somebody's been walking on this. The leather is what and it almost dries out my mouth a little bit, which these other two had none of those tannin drying, anything like that going on. This one
yeah,
dries out my mouth a little bit, which I don't usually love, but for some reason it kind of works on this glass right here.
yeah, yeah. This is the Texas special. I mean, I think it really is
This is Texas. That's what it tastes like. It tastes like
exactly.
Texas.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but it's charming that way. Like the terroir sticks out like a sore thumb, and I love it. Like you wouldn't. I think if you tasted this blind and somebody said, "What state does that come from?" I don't know that you would guess anything other than Texas.
You would almost have to.
Yeah,
Dave says that's darker than the 13th DO and the Coy Hill. It's definitely darker than the Coy Hill, and the Coy Hill is
Mhm.
probably one of the darkest things I have in my collection. The 13th Colony, I know you let me borrow, Dave. That was dark. It would be interesting to see these two next to each other. This is almost more of like a redness though, like a cherry, like a dark cherry dark, where like the
Yeah,
13th Colony was almost like a molasses dark.
yeah. Just like a garnet or ruby or something.
Yeah, it's
She's a
hard to
beaut.
see on camera, but it's just next to these two. It's just crazy to see the difference of them.
This coats the coat on this. It's like once it's on your tongue, it's never ever going away. Like that's why
Right.
I brought a carbonated water in here with me specifically because of this whiskey
It's for
because
that one. I'm glad I have something as well.
it's the only way to get it off of your tongue. It sticks like glue.
It almost fits. So like when I smoke a cigar, and I don't smoke cigars often, but when I do, it's you get those medium or those full bodied cigars, and you smoke them, and then you wake up the next day, and you're like, ah, I shouldn't have smoked that last night, right? This I feel like I would wake up even after brushing my teeth in the morning and at night. I feel like I would wake up and this would still be on my like I would drive down the street and be like, should I be driving right now? This is still in
Yeah,
my breath.
between between the proof and the way it sticks. Yeah,
Right. You'd have to take a
it's a
couple
whiskey to
hours
be
off
very
just to
careful
be
with.
safe. Always get dark fruity component on the single malt.
Hmm.
There, these first two, or the second one, what was that? The Stranahans. I got a lot, like you said, that raspberry on there, but I do feel like I get a fruity note on this as well before that leather kind of kicks in. Something
Yeah,
like that frosting or that sweetness or that something in the beginning of this.
this is maybe the most. I think it's cherry. I think this is one of the more
It might
cherry
be
forward
cherry.
American single malts that I've had.
Yeah.
Because usually that's not something I get on those.
Okay. What is have we talked prices on all of these?
Oh
I think
yeah,
you mentioned.
this one's the priciest one. So Westland is $75.
Okay.
I think that's because it's the limited edition bottle. I don't know that they're all that expensive. Maybe they are. The Stranahan's is that we got for 50, which was a bit of a coup getting it for that price. And then the Balcones is 4 years, 11 months, 132 proof, $78. We got that one for. And there's still, if you're in Central Oregon, I don't know if there's a lot of Oregonians on the stream. Trailhead still has this single barrel, and I would buy more, but I feel like this one's going to last me a while because it's it's pretty proofy.
So Dave asks if Phil's a single malt fan. I'll be curious to see if he's had slash liked the Little Book 6. Are you a Little Book fan?
Not really.
I've avoided them at all costs, to be honest with you.
I tried one at a bar a while back, and I enjoyed it, but I don't remember being enamored with it enough to actually go out and pursue a bottle. It's not something I ever see around here. So, other than that one experience in a bar, and that was probably 2 years ago, I haven't really thought about it.
I think I had Little Book, whichever one was the rice. They had rice as a grain, I believe, in there.
Mm,
I think it was 4. I had the Little Book, whatever the again. I think it was 4, and it was just one of those things. One, I'd rather have Booker's, and then two, just the price. I again the same reason as you. I wasn't in love with it, so I
yeah,
didn't pursue any
prices.
of them.
I had an opportunity to buy, I think the latest one, but the price was absurd. It was like $200, and I was like
Yeah,
you said, I'd rather have a Booker's. I'd rather have two Knob Creek single barrels.
couldn't. I mean, the Knob Creeks. I haven't had a bad one yet for a Knob Creek single
No,
barrel.
Julie and I
Little.
were just talking about that a couple days ago. How like for all the money we spend on the you know high end whiskeys and things that we're told are great, Knob Creek is just it just hits every time. It's just
You
great. The
wonder you
flavor of
wonder if
it.
you're not doing the YouTube thing, and I think about this often, where my collection would be. You know, I'd have, if these 150 bottles would turn into 25 bottles of Russell's Reserve single barrel, 25 bottles of Knob Creek single barrel, and a couple experimental bottles in between.
Yeah. Well, somebody mentioned down here too, and I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry, but somebody mentioned um, that um, their New Year's resolution, that's what it was. They wanted to get into more craft and more single barrels.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, half the bottles on our end of year list last year, maybe more, were single barrels, just things that
Yep.
we found in our travels or at distilleries or at various stores. Like the the greatest stuff out there right now is these weird single barrels that are exciting. It's like we keep talking about the reason that you said like this year I want to try new flavors, scotches, single malts, try some new things. It's the exact same reason that I think that single barrels are so exciting. They offer us something completely, maybe not completely different, but different enough that it's exciting.
Yeah.
Different flavors, exciting.
And I think Knob Creek's one of the best examples of that. So you have the Knob Creek 9, the Knob Creek 12, the Knob Creek 15, and now the 18. I haven't experienced the 18 yet, but the
Hmm.
single barrel is nothing like those three. It's not, the 12 I think I could compare closest to, but every single barrel that I've had has been something better than the versions that they're putting out daily, which is
Totally.
obviously why they put out the single barrels. This is the best that we've got, so why not spend a couple extra bucks and get it?
Yeah, and we talked about how putting water or ice in any single one of these American single malts is a really nice way to enjoy them. It opens up new flavors. I feel the same way about the single barrel reserve 9 year from Knob Creek, that they are each a little different, and a little water to me, everybody's different. 3, 4, 5 drops of water opens that up so nice for me. That's how I drink that whiskey 100% of the time. Now I don't even drink it neat, unless it's the first pour out of a new bottle and I just want to see how it hits. That's one of those bottles I always put a couple of drops of water in, and it's super satisfying.
You're gonna make the whole whiskey community very upset with that. You can't add water. You gotta drink it straight, no cubes, no nothing. I'm a fan of the way you just said it. Try it one way. Try it straight up. Try it neat the way that it's they bottled it that way, and then to whatever you're liking. Whether it's 1 drop of water, 5 drops of water, an ice cube. I'm a big fan
Mhm.
of an ice cube just because then I can kind of see, as the ice. Okay, I liked this. You can't really measure it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of water,
Yeah,
but okay, I like this better when the ice was half melted. Maybe I need to add a little bit of water to this.
yeah. Paul Johnson says that the KC9 single barrels are so good, better than the 12 year. But if the 12 year came in at 120 proof, I'd love to try that. They did that with the Knob Creek 12 in some places. Somebody actually sent us a KC12 cask strength pick. They
Really?
sent us a sample of it on a 5 Sip Friday where we didn't know what we were drinking. We were at Devil's Tower, Wyoming, and you're sitting drinking outside. You wouldn't think anything would really taste that good. And it was awesome. It tasted so absolutely delicious. I've been hunting that bottle ever since. The one bottle that I will say I'm actively hunting, and I've never seen it.
I was
But
Knob
apparently in
Creek 12
Minnesota, they're
years.
readily available.
Knob Creek 12 years, I call it the Goldilocks effect, where like the 9 years a little too much this, so the 15's a little too much that. The 12 year is right in my wheelhouse. So a Knob Creek 12 year 120 would be crazy good, I feel like.
Yeah.
And now, do you guys? I'm just curious. You guys have travel plans yet for this upcoming year? Are you still in the middle of making them, or
I mean, Julie's in Florida, so as one of us does.
she's got travel plans? What's she doing down there? Big parties going on?
Her,
Bachelorette? What's
her folks and her grandparents, her mom, her folks and her grandma live in Florida this time of year. Her grandma's there year round, and so her folks go down every year. Her sister lives in London, but she came across for a 10-day trip over there. So Julie went over there to meet up with her sister and hang out with the family and see some friends and stuff. So I'm landlocked for the moment. My work is really busy right now, and it's been hard to think about stuff. We hoped to do a Highway 10 trip this year. We really wanted to start in Santa Monica through Joshua Tree, go check out Whiskey Del Buck, go into Austin, check out still Austin, New Orleans, and all the way into Jacksonville, Florida, where Highway 10 dumps you out on the coast. That's something we'll probably try and do next year. We didn't get to do it this year because of just extenuating circumstances, but we're putting the cat in her little harness and training her to walk outside and stuff so she can be a good van cat. We're getting there.
gotta be a good van cat? Well, you're always welcome out on the East Coast if you ever make it out this way.
Oh, we will. I'm sure we will.
It's got to be on
Would
the
love to
agenda
do it.
eventually.
We actually really want to get that whole Eastern Seaboard. We haven't been in years. I mean, we love the idea of going to like Maryland and popping in on some of these new rye distilleries popping up over there. And, um, we have a lot of people that we'd love to see in Georgia and South Carolina area, folks that are supporters of our channel that have been very good to us. And I think that we would get along great in person. So we're eager to get over there. Absolutely.
That's always nice to hear. So now I will say, off of my first, again, we have I have 2 ounces of each of these, so I can only do so much judging, but I still think the Stranahan's is gonna win this for me. I think that one is just very good, very good. And going into this, I'll be completely honest with you. I did not think I was going to enjoy these. I thought that I was gonna kind of have to like go through them and be like, yeah. So my first experience with Scotch was Johnny Walker. What's the expensive one? Blue Label or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's my first experience with Scotch. So it was a wedding. Somebody was like, "We've got to buy him a bottle of whiskey." It was before I knew like my life with bourbon. So everybody was like, "Let's just buy him the most expensive." People like Scotch, so we bought Johnny Walker Blue Label, and I drank it, and I was like, "I'm never gonna drink Scotch again." And then I started to get more into whiskey, and I'm like, I probably didn't give Scotch um, the fair approach to actually drinking Scotch. I just drank one Scotch and wrote it off. I feel
Yeah.
like I did the same thing with an American single malt before I went into this blind, or not blind, but drinks.
I mean, think about if you wanted to try a bourbon and the first thing somebody handed to you was I don't know, I mean, there's plenty of 120, 150,
Larceny
$180
small
bottles.
batch.
There's plenty of really expensive bottles out there that aren't
Oh,
that good.
expensive wise, yeah. I mean, you could have gave him 100. I'm thinking Elijah Craig 18 year, something like that. That's
Yeah, something that to a novice palate might taste like a musty, oaky sweat sock. I
right.
mean,
Just
who knows?
exactly.
But what else? What are we drinking on Thursday? I don't remember what else I sent you actually.
So, it's a great question. We have McCarthy's, which I believe you talked about earlier.
Yeah, McCarthy's absolutely. That's the bottle that I will say opened up my eyes to single malts, scotches, new flavors in general.
And
That
that's
blew my
peated.
palate away.
That one's peated.
That's peated, yeah.
So again, I think I've only had experience with one other peated whiskey. I'll have to try and remember what it is. Paul John or something like that. John Paul.
Oh yeah.
It's like the lower shelf stuff, but it's like a $30 bottle. But that's the only peated I've had. Bull Run 7-year
Oh,
cognac.
that's a cognac finished American single malt that comes out of Portland, Oregon. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm
118
curious to
proof.
know what you're going to think about that because I think that's the only one that I sent you that's finished.
Okay, and then old Pulteney.
Old Pulteney, yeah, there's a
Old
Scotch.
Pulteney.
That's one
There's
that
the
I got at an
Scotch.
airport that I'm excited to share because I thought if we're going to go the distance, let's really go. Let's see how
Just
far we can push this thing.
I feel like we started at the right place tonight and we're moving
Yeah,
to the right place tomorrow, Thursday. But again, just look at the color difference between these three right here.
it's true.
This one is crazy dark, or sorry, this one is crazy dark, and then this it's just that's different.
I think we went through some really huge flavors tonight, and what we're gonna do on Thursday is visit some much more I don't know, subtle flavors. Other than maybe
Okay.
the Bull Run. The Bull Run's kind of huge with that cognac finish. Um, but yeah, this I think was a nice introduction, and I'm glad that you liked them, especially that Stranahan's. I think Stranahan's is kind of when you can find a cask strength version of it's just one of the best things out there whiskey wise. It blows me away. Every single time we get one, we do these quarterly what we're drinking now videos.
Yep.
Every time we get a new one, it winds up on that list because it's what I just wind up drinking for like a month straight. It's so good.
Right.
It's just great.
Yeah, and again, I was worried going into it because I didn't want to come on here and just be like, nah, that's crap. No, that's crap. No, that's crap. The first one is the only reason I don't enjoy it as much as I think I should is because, like you said before, I think it's a little thin. I think it's a little light. And
Yeah.
when the flavors aren't what you're used to, and then you get something that's a little thin as well, it just becomes like, all right, it's not for me. But the way the flavors pop on these other two just make them, you almost have to sit there and like, what am I drinking? This is, do I enjoy this or not? And I end up enjoying it a lot.
The Westland is especially interesting. We actually didn't know anything about that brand, but we were at a bar called No Name Bar in Seattle, and we ordered a couple of whiskeys, and nobody knows who we are, and we're nobodies in the whiskey world. But we were sitting at this bar, and the owner noticed that we were being really judicious with what we were ordering off of his whiskey list, which was impressive. And he came over and he just kind of kept on sliding bottles over, and he would make a recommendation. And if we would be like, oh, I don't know, I've never, he'd be like, have you had it? And we'd be like, no. He would just pour it.
Just try it.
And
Try it out.
yeah, just try it. And
Which is the way he should
inevitably,
have done it.
right. And then if we liked that, then he would say, well, then you should buy a glass of this other one. So he was, he was
He
just
was
selling us
upselling
on
you a
to it.
little bit, right?
But we tried a lot of things that he just kept pouring for us, and that Westland was one of them. And he poured us a few different variations of it. And that is one thing I learned about Westland is the more bizarre, because they have all these different wood finishes and things, and they're all very small batch. Those other things didn't really hit my palate, but that straight ahead standard edition that they've got was very good. And then the beer finishes that they're doing now, I think they're super interesting. They really hit my palate.
And again, there's nothing off-putting about this, which is what I was kind of expecting going into the experience. I was expecting to just straight up not enjoy it. Just comparing them to the other two, that it does seem a little bit flat compared to these other two flavor-wise. Again, nothing off-putting. It's just if I have to put an order to it, I would say the Stratahans, the Balcones, which was the biggest surprise for me tonight, because the one experience I had with, and it goes back to, maybe we don't judge a book by its cover, try different things from the company. And then this Westland, again, it's still good. I'm interested to see how this one kind of compares to the other three come Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I see Marty from Whiskey Noses in the chat. What's up, Marty? Good to see you, bud. And Peter White says, thanks, Phil, for getting me hooked on Trails End 10 Garyana Oak finish. Yeah, I love that Trails End 10. That's actually made by Clear Creek Distillery, who makes McCarthy's, which we'll try on Thursday night.
Okay.
Man, they make such good stuff. We have not done a single barrel as a channel yet. We haven't figured out the logistics of it, but we are desperate to do a barrel with Clear Creek. And we're thinking, well, details to come later. We've got some wild ideas. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome to hear. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. So the Westland, to me, it's so earthy and so different that way. Do you have any left of these?
Yeah, I have a little bit left of each one, so I wanted to make sure we saved a little bit.
You don't have any more in the samples?
No more in the sample.
Okay.
Should I have saved them for Thursday?
No, I'm wondering. Well, maybe I'll send you some more so you can try them all in a row and see what you like. I like this idea of breaking them up though, because I do think that this trio definitely has a different profile than the
I feel
other
like
trio.
if we would have went with 6, just based off of how many different flavors I've gotten so far, 6 would have been overwhelming for one
It
night.
would have been too much.
Yeah.
But the McCarthy's is peated. It's also a cask strength single barrel. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to hit your palate compared to what this Westland did, because they are totally different, even though they're made 3 hours from each other.
Okay.
So, yeah,
different malts being used for those, I'm assuming, or are they?
I would assume so.
Right.
Yeah, and they're just, well, the McCarthy's is actually a peated single malt that comes, I think, from Scotland. But yeah, the terroir matters so much. Even Bull Run with their American single malt using the Portland watershed, it's just some of the best water in the whole world. It makes all the difference. That Bull Run spring. So I think we're going to have a fun time on Thursday too. I'm excited to see what you think of those. This
Eric Anderson says Paul John makes some great single malts. I've only had the one thing from Paul John. Sugar Kitty says Indian whiskey, correct? Yeah, that's the only Indian whiskey I've had as well. Danny says, shoot, gotta watch Thursday now. Curious what the East Coast thinks about those two, because they are on my hunt list.
Talking about Amrit and Paul John and all the single malts from around the globe. I had no idea that there were so many out there. But Eric Gunderson is in the chat tonight. He sent us so many of them, and we've only scratched the surface of even what he sent us. We have so many to explore here. We're gonna wind up doing a Patreon live stream, I think, at some point, where it's just single malts from around the world, and there's so many to dip your toe in. There's so much excitement out there.
He mentions the Amaret is my favorite Indian single malt. Paul John, Indri, etc. Indian single malt can hold its own against Scotch and Irish single malt. So Again, I don't I'm new to the entire world outside of the bourbon and rye world. This is my first introduction to any of this, so it's very interesting to see. And you've mentioned Eric all night talking about his knowledge and how much he knows about all of this. So Eric, I definitely hope to see you Thursday night so that we can dive a little bit deeper into these next three.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Julie and I got back from Scotland and Ireland in October. We were there for nearly a month, and it was such an eye-opening trip trying all those Irish whiskeys because here you can try them here and there, but for the most part, if you're at a bar, you're getting Jameson or some
It's all it's
lower
it.
shelf stuff, and Jameson's fine. But the real all stars, the stuff that you have to buy a full bottle of it, like you said earlier. Do you want to spend $50 or $75 on a bottle that you don't know anything about
Right.
as an American for an Irish whiskey? Going there, even though it's expensive to get there, um, going into the bars there, the prices are reasonable. They're affordable for the most part for nearly anything that you want to try. And we were able to just mow down every type of possible sample of Irish whiskey and of Scotch, and we really learned what we liked. From Scotch, whether it was the region or Ireland, if it was a particular lineup, a brand line that we really liked or whatever it was. Going to a bar and tasting through a segment of whiskey types, if you go to a really good whiskey bar, still I think is the best way to find out what you like. Your palate may be affected by other things in that environment compared to where you're at home, but you can still get a pretty good idea what you like.
No, I agree. And going to whiskey bars, even for the bourbon slash rye side of things, has been one of the ways that I've grown my collection outside of what I know and love, and then found new things that I like to enjoy. Because one, between my brother-in-law now who likes to collect whiskeys, between my father-in-law who loves to collect whiskeys, between the three of us, I don't have to go out there and spend, 200, 300, 400, $500 on five, six, seven bottles just to see if I like them. And I would suggest that anybody who gets involved in this community finds that group or finds that community that can kind of help them out and distinguish between those things, or find somebody that you love on whiskey YouTube that has a similar palate to you, because it's going to save you a lot of money and it's just a lot better way to do it.
That is one of the fun things about about Whiskey Tube being what it is right now. There are a ton of channels, obviously. Just looking at, we're both going to be in Mad Madness, for instance. There are so many channels in there this year. It really is going to
Yep.
be madness. Um, but you can find somebody whose palate aligns with yours. And
When are you scheduled for that yet? Do you know?
don't know.
Don't know yet. Okay, I'm in a pre-qualifying round on the 17th, so we'll see. I think this might help. By the way, you never know what he's gonna throw in there.
No, that's
You hope
true.
he sticks to bourbon and whiskey, but this might help me out with a little bit of those tasting notes.
Does he still live in Colorado?
Yeah, I believe so. Right?
You might get some Stranahan's.
You never know. You never know. And now I'll be all over it because of this glass right here.
This tastes like sugar coated old raspberries. I know this flavor
Right?
profile.
I know this flavor profile exactly. Well, listen, I don't want to keep everybody long. We'll hang out for another couple minutes here. If anybody has questions or anything in the chat, I'll say like a 9:30 cutoff here, in case anybody wants to watch LeBron James try and break the single scoring record. They start at 10 o'clock, so everybody can get a couple of drinks in there, in them before there. So, any questions for going into Thursday night, or any other comments, we'll be happy to answer them. I know I went on before this, and me and Phil talked for a couple of minutes just because, one, I had a computer update and he had one as well. My Bluetooth wasn't working on my computer. I'd like to use headphones. Just you somehow figured out how to make the same mic as I have not pick up your audio. I haven't figured that out yet, but we'll get there one day.
It's
But
pure luck.
it's sometimes it is, it's whatever
When it
the
comes to
computer feels
hardware,
like doing that.
I'm clueless. I'm the worst.
I've got everything but audio down. Audio is the one thing I don't have figured out, but
Well, since we started using this mic for our actual regular videos, it's changed everything because we used to just echo, and sometimes our lapel mics worked, and sometimes they didn't.
yep.
And we have a new camera, so we're using a shotgun mic for that when we're going to be outdoors this year, and hopefully that goes off without a hitch, but it probably won't.
Never will.
No.
You'll figure. I mean, I used the shotgun mic indoors for a while, and then I got this, and I kind of just set it up farther. But definitely for outdoors, you want that direct line of communication.
Well, we're usually standing in front of a river, so I need to have a lapel mic. Otherwise, all you get is river.
Right.
But it looks pretty.
It does look pretty. A lot of your videos again have been awesome to watch, from a lot of the scenery that I love to see.
They need to
which
just
has
put
been a lot of
captions on
fun.
everything and stop trying to have audio altogether. Just put music and captions on and be done with it.
Just another 20 minutes worth of work per video.
Right.
It's great to see two of my favorite bourbon influencers together. Brent, I appreciate that. I honestly, and I can say this
Right.
without any type of hitch, that Phil has been one of those channels. Phil has been one of those people, I should say, not one of those channels, that I've been in communication with since I started my channel. Outside of the whiskey side of things, has just been a great person to talk to about, like we were just talking about, audio, video, just fun things that to help make my channel a little bit better. So Phil has always been supportive of me in that sense, and this is just another sense of his gratitude to send me some amazing whiskey. So I appreciate you for that, Phil.
Yeah, of course. And let me say too, I mean, we've been communicating on Instagram since maybe before we both had YouTube channels. We
Yeah.
we were both on Instagram before YouTube. Um, and yeah, I've been it's been fun to watch your channel grow as well. And um, everybody, I want you to know that I've been on Chris for a long time about a specific video I'd really like
Here
him
we
to
go.
do.
Ice cream and bourbon. Here it is.
I want an ice cream pairing video so
It's
badly.
coming this year, I promise you. This is the year. This is the year we're gonna make it. I need to eat a lot of ice cream to. I don't
Yeah,
want to just pick butter pecan and the buttery bourbon. I gotta truly go through and eat a lot of ice cream to compare. But you
if
have.
if
I think
if
the
you
first
don't.
thing you've ever mentioned to me was ice. When you found out I worked at an ice cream store, that my family owned an ice cream store, you said we have to do a bourbon whiskey or a bourbon ice cream comparison
If it doesn't
collaboration.
happen in 2023, and then that's our first travels of 2024 is we're coming out and we're going to
You
spend
can
an
you can
entire day.
unsubscribe from Bourbon of the Week if it doesn't happen in 2023. It's coming. I've got a
We'll
couple.
make
I've
it
actually talked to a couple of people saying how often you guys have told me to do this. That it's gonna get done. I have some panel people ready to be involved.
I actually think that if you opened it up a little bit, yeah, I mean, you could do bourbon, you could do rye, but if you opened it up a little bit, I think there's some really solid Irish whiskeys that would
Uh
pair great with ice cream.
oh. Okay.
Maybe I'll send you some samples for
I
that.
was gonna say maybe we need to we the next live stream is gonna be some Irish whiskey samples.
I think that's a great idea. Shoot, we're coming up on March. We actually are. We have an entire week of St. Patrick's Day of Irish whiskey uh, footage of content that we're putting out there.
Love that for March. We do the March Madness Bourbon Bracket single barrel edition. So my big thing with
Oh,
single
that's
barrels
right.
is I hate I hate reviewing single barrels for the everyday person because you don't have the same single barrel I have. So what do you care what it tastes like? So I like to just do the March Madness Bourbon Bracket single barrel edition. We'll have Selection Sunday coming up here at the end of February, and then all throughout March we compare two different single barrels to each other and see who wins. People can put out can fill out brackets. I know you did that the bracket thing as well, which is awesome.
Brackets are a lot of fun.
Brackets are
I'm,
fun.
I'm always surprised more people don't do it since it's free and it only takes a second.
Hmm.
Um, it's just, I mean, I love that kind of thing, but maybe I'm a statistics guy, so I
Right.
mean, I can't figure out hardware and microphones, but I look at
I'll tell
numbers
you
all day.
how the bracket should work out. Right.
Yeah. I see somebody asking me here. Jake McKee wants to know what is your pour of choice, bourbon, Irish, or Scotch?
A tough question, he says.
It is so mood based for me.
Is
Honestly,
it?
Julie and I, we don't watch a ton of TV, but we are outdoors a lot. But if like we recently went through the entire James Bond series, and I drank Scotch every night. I picked a different Scotch that I had or a sample that I had every night just to sit with it and you know train my palate to understand the flavors and that sort of thing and just to introduce that new flavor. And I'm a guy who just likes new things. I'm always listening to new music. I'm always watching something new. I don't like to repeat anything, which is bad for a guy who collects bottles. But um,
they
it's
sit. They sit a
it's
lot.
funny to it's funny to see, it is a mood-based thing, but it's also a time-based thing. Like March is coming up and I love to drink Irish whiskey and listen to Irish music all through March. That's the entire month. That's what I do. And I'll probably start any day now because I start a little early because I love March. I love St.
You
Patrick's
gotta
Day.
you gotta rev up the palate. Get it used to everything that's gonna happen.
Exactly. I think if I had to choose an overall favorite though, it for me it always goes back to bourbon. It's a for me it's classic flavor. It's what I've been drinking the longest, and it's historically been my favorite. If I have to It's hard to pick an absolute favorite to pull off the shelf, but those versatile bottles that are always on your shelf that you love in every situation, the rare breeds, Buffalo Trace Standard Edition, this stuff that's, if you're out and about, you can usually find it. This stuff that's reliable, that sort of thing. That's what I OGD bonded. That's always
I
on the
know.
shelf and it's always in the
uh,
glass.
OGD is what I was going to mention, is one of those things that I knew about it, but I didn't really truly try it until I saw you talk about it as much as you did. The bonded being one of your personal favorites for just that everyday on the shelf. Not, I wouldn't even say it's a cheap bottle. While it is cheap, it doesn't taste cheap. You know what I mean? It's one of
Yeah.
those bottles. And then even Old Forester was another one that you guys truly, I've heard of it. It was around, and then you guys talked about it, and I went back and I tried it, and I was like, these two know what they're talking about when it comes to whiskey. So OGD and Old Forester, I can truly say, are on my shelf because of the way that you two talked about it.
I actually, that's incredible to know. I actually finished um, in the last week an Old Forester 100 in 1897 and 1870. So we're real shy on Old Forester on the shelf right now.
It's not a good
So
thing.
no, no, I'm gonna have to make a shopping trip soon. Um, Somebody wants to know what my favorite Bond movie is. I will say that the most surprising. Oh, it's Eric Gunderson. Good question, Eric. The most surprising movies to me, because you never hear about them, were Timothy Dalton movies. And yes, they were like 80s fantastic and whatnot. But the Timothy Dalton movies were the ones that nobody ever talked about them. I never knew much about them. Everybody knows Sean Connery and all that. George, I thought his what he did in that time period, if you just recognize them for what they are in that time period, I thought his movies were great. I thought they were fun. They were more realistic in a lot of ways. Um, and I also thought George Lazenby did a surprisingly good job, even though most people think I'm crazy for saying that. I don't have a
But
favorite film though. I just like them as a set. I thought they were fun to watch through. They were fun to watch through all at once because I never really recognized that they were a singular person and a singular story. I just thought they were nonsense. They were
I've seen like one James Bond movie here and there. I've never watched like the series through or anything like that.
when I saw that they were all on Prime, we started watching them, and then they went
I
off
have
Prime, and then came
Primes.
back
Oh,
off.
are they? I was gonna say, are they on now? Because I have Prime, so I'll have to follow
They
up.
they seem like they come and go, but if you see them, I think they're worth watching. I mean, the early the first like five or six are a little uncomfortable to watch through as a modern human, but I
You
think
get
that
through it.
it's fun to watch as a tome of these were moments in time and to
Right.
recognize them for what they were. You know, I think they're important in history that way. They're fun to watch that way.
This is another question that I'm guessing is geared towards you only because of the circumstances. I've never had any peated scotch. Any suggestions? I've never had any peated scotch myself, so
Um, Boy, this is a great question for the chat because I think that there's a lot of good ones out there. My introduction, the one that really turned me on to Scotch, and this happened years ago, and I didn't. All I knew was that all Scotch didn't taste like this, and that when I tasted, I knew I tasted something special. Was the Belvani Double Wood, pretty readily available out there, a little pricey, but easy sipper, well aged, a lot of flavor, a lot of easy flavor. Um, I think it's absolutely worth checking out because it's not super smoky, but it's peated without being overly smoky, and it has because it's been in double oaked and finished, you get something pretty special out of it. You can get a lot of flavors, and for bourbon drinkers who are more than I would say more than novice, who have experienced different flavors and can start to recognize the difference between wild turkey and Jim Beam and that sort of thing. A Balvenie Doublewood is a great, even though it's pricier, I think it's a great entry point into Scotch, into peated whiskeys. I don't know anybody that's ever had a Balvenie and didn't enjoy it, um, but I also don't talk to that many people.
limited people talking to. There's a lot of people saying don't start with Isla's. Again, is that like a thing? Don't start with Isla's? I don't know.
I'm bad
What's
at this.
wrong with Isla Scotch?
Um, There are some things that are especially smoky. A lot of people, I think, confuse peat with smoke
Okay.
because you can have a peated whiskey that's not smoked. Um, and the other
I
thing to
feel
keep in
like
mind
I've
is
I've
that,
done that myself.
yeah, I mean, it's an easy mistake to make. The other thing is that it's tricky to think about barrels. Barrels are not the same in Scotland and Ireland and in those places because they don't have groves of oak trees like we have here. These are
Right.
oak trees 70, 80 years to grow big enough to be used. You won't find that on those islands generally. So you're seeing used bourbon barrels, used sherry casks coming around from Spain. You're seeing all these used barrels in that world, and so there are some really interesting scotches that are peated but not smoked, and then they're aged in bourbon barrels. That creates a world of flavor that is really hard to recognize if your palate's not ready for it. Which is why I think that it's a bad idea generally to start with a huge smoked, bombastic Scotch. For most of us, it's going to turn us off. Um, Even the Westland here tonight, that little bit of peat brings it to an earthiness that, as a bourbon drinker, we're not super familiar with
I think
usually.
that might have been what like truly did it for me. That just compared to the other two, it just had something on that on the end of that that I didn't truly love.
Yeah. And there's Eric Gunderson dropping some knowledge here about Isla being heavily peated and it can turn the novice off against peated scotch. Yeah. Heavily peated or again, aggressively smoked some of these. I know people that are crazy about their tire fires. They want that scotch that absolutely melts your face off
Right.
with smoke. That's too intense even for me. I don't I can find some interesting flavors in it because I'm a curious guy, but as a average drinker who would just approach that and go, I think I'm going to have a whiskey. I'll have this one that everybody here is drinking. If it's if it's too smoky, it's not something that I'm interested in at all.
Dan agrees with you, so you're not
Oh, good.
wrong. Dan says completely agree with Phil on that.
Well, I'm glad we're on the same
Which is
page.
why this is why we bring Phil on the channel. So we've had Phil on the channel a couple of times, and 95% of the time it's one to hang out with Phil, but two just because his knowledge is so deep. Whether he knows about a particular subject or not, he knows enough about the whiskey that he's drinking or the whiskey that he sent me tonight to give us enough information that it's one good for me, and then two, I'm assuming good for the viewers because you can tell me you're not versed in this knowledge, but you are, and it's amazing actually.
I mean, it's. I think it's an interesting thing to be a jack of all trades, sort of, the Renaissance type of person when you're enjoying whiskey, which you're discovering that right now, that there's new
Yep.
flavors out there that are worth discovering, and when you start discovering them, it's just like when you got into bourbon, you knew right away, oh, this is going to be one of my favorites. Oh, this one's
Yep.
in my top five, because I remember when you started and you started doing that list, and you were keeping a running list of all your whiskeys and where they ranked. And that idea, I think, is so important, and it's also important to revisit it and see how your palate's changing over time. And so being able to do that with, once you've done that with bourbon and once you've done that with rye, and now you're starting to do that with other flavors, it's that Renaissance idea of just being able to cover a ton of ground. You may not be an expert on any of it, but if you know what you like, isn't that what this is all about? That's the journey. That's what we're all on.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And I think the hardest part about where I am now with the YouTube thing is people see that list. Maybe they just saw my latest video and they're like, "Oh, this guy has Larceny A122 at 5.7 or 8.72, and I think that's a 10." And I'm like, I did that 2 years ago. You know, I'm only 2 years into this or whatever it happens to be. It's so hard to keep up with that list, and I never thought about that going into it. But I think the word you used is revisiting, and I think that's very important for a lot of these
Mhm.
whiskey. Um, Elijah Craig was something I didn't truly enjoy, especially the barrel proof when I first got started. Maybe I didn't like a 12-year-old whiskey. Maybe I didn't like a higher proof whiskey when I first got started. I tried it. I was like, this is hot. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. And now 2, 3 years later, it's like, okay, this is really good. I like this.
Yeah.
Revisiting is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's palate is different too. I mean, we get that comment all the time, like, "Oh, I can't believe you didn't like this," or "I can't believe you liked this better than that. That's one of my favorite whiskeys." And like, oh, I don't know what to
I
tell
don't.
you.
Yeah.
It was just like ECBP didn't hit your palate off the bat. ECBP, when I tasted it, I said, this was the best thing I've ever had. And that's why our palates are different. They're always going to be different,
Right.
and we're always going to be in a different place. So it's tough when there's a team, people pick their teams and they're really hardcore about it. And it's like, well, even on different days, I love ECBP, but we had two ECBPs in our tournament this year for the Advent tournament. Neither one of them made it to the finals. And the reason that I included both of them in there was because neither one of them was my favorite ECBP of the year. And I wanted to see exactly how
If
good they were. And
if that worked out, right.
yeah. And so you never know. I mean, even your favorites sometimes don't go the distance. That's whiskey, and that's day-to-day tastings. Everything's
Yep.
different from day to day.
Yep. So again, I'm gonna get everybody off here nice and early tonight. I know we're up against a big competition tonight. There's a bunch of bigger YouTube channels out there tonight, so I appreciate everybody who's been here tonight, stopped by, said anything, chatted, hung out the entire time. Phil, I know you brought a lot of these people in tonight, so definitely excited for the Bourbon Van community being here tonight. Again, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What does that run for you? Is that 5 p.m., 6 p.m.?
5 p.m. That's my happy
5
hour.
p 5 if you want to pour something up at 5 p.m. on the West Coast, you're more than welcome to on Phil's channel. Again, that'll be the 9th, Thursday the 9th at on Phil's channel. We will be drinking 3 other whiskeys that Phil happened to send me, which again I appreciate him for that. So we got a couple more minutes here. If anybody has any other questions or anything like that, we'll be happy to take them. But otherwise, we're gonna hang out for 2 more minutes and then call it a night. 2 more lives, Chris. Nice work.
Brent Worrells is talking about the Ardbeg Ugadal, which I didn't know how to say when I first read that. So
That's why I
Ardbeg
didn't read it. So
Ugadal is very good. It's I think 105 proof, and it's aged in bourbon barrels or finished in bourbon barrels, one or the other. And that was Ardbeg is one that I'm not usually crazy about. Even the 10, which is quite a good whiskey, it's never really hit my palate all that much. I recognize it for what it is, but it's never been my favorite. The Ugadal, that's pretty special if you're looking to get into something that has smoke and peat, and as a bourbon drinker, it still has some semblance of a bourbon flavor to it. That's a pretty interesting whiskey. It is aggressive. It is one that you'll have on your shelf for a while you get used to it. But I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of that whiskey, having that bottle. I finished it in less than 3 or 4 months, I think, which is unusual for me. But I think it's one of those bottles that had so much happening and it was so interesting that I just kept revisiting it.
it's crazy to hear I finished it in 3 to 4 months, and I'm like, damn, that was quick. But like some people would be like, damn, that was on your shelf for 3 or 4 months, and to some that seems like a lot. But when you have 150, 200 bottles on your shelf, you find yourself reaching for things. And Phil and Julie put out videos all the time what we're drinking right now, and it's those bottles that they continue to reach for. So you can buy bottles, try them, and even enjoy them, and then you're not reaching for them all the time. Where there's some bottles that you continue to reach for, which is very interesting.
That's the thing about having a channel. Even on a Wednesday night, if we're not producing a video or doing a live or doing something else, we might just line up 6 whiskeys, tiny little pours just to train our palates and see what we like and try new things. And we get so many things, and we've got such a backlog of things that are sitting on the shelf that we haven't even gotten into, but that's the nature of it.
That is. Jobin just stopped in at the end and said the van is coming to PA, question mark. Eventually. The van will be here. The van will be in PA. I promise you, when I know about it, you guys will know about it. So trust me. They will be
at Chris's house. We're gonna
They'll be at the house. They'll be here drinking some of my bourbon. I promise you that. So when that happens, I will let you know. Eric Gunderson says aged in ex bourbon and finished in sherry casks. Such a fantastic peated scotch. I believe it's NCF too. I don't know what NCF is.
That is a non-chill
filtered. Okay.
Yeah, that's the Ugadal. It's got so much flavor. It's so much. There's layers and layers and layers. You want to get your palate used to a pretty intense scotch and find some new flavors too. It's pretty good training.
Perfect. Well, listen, that's where we're going to end it for tonight. Again, we have about 30 minutes until LeBron James beats the score record. Thursday night on Phil's channel with me and Phil. We'll be on the Bourbon Van's channel on Thursday night at 8 p.m., 5 p.m. Western time. And otherwise, I appreciate everybody for coming out tonight. We will see you guys next time. And cheers. Thank you, Phil, for everything tonight. We'll see you Thursday.
Thanks, Chris. Cheers. Good to be here.